Yes. Here we are. GLM, God Love Money, episode 4. You know, got to keep the cycle going. Still pushing through this. So today we're going to try to get a good 30-30 in. That means 30 accepting those that want to come in on the line, ask any questions, inspire others, turn that never-ending wheel of consciousness and really spark something, you know, and keep it real. And another 30 of answering questions on the rapid fire tip. So if you have any questions, you can ask them inside of Instagram. They got a specific area for you. You can answer the question there, and then I'll pull it up towards the last 30 minutes of this build and get to it. So let me jump in on this today and see. Last time we had somewhat of a monologue. I really wanted to build and set a foundation of awareness. So it's good now that we can come in, start sharing with brothers and sisters. I will ask that if you are asking to be on the line today, that you be mindful of the time. You know, I really don't want to come in and drive over you and tell you to stop and all that kind of stuff. You know, some folks be jumping in midstream. They're like, man, Seven's rude. He just got that person right off the line. And it's not that. We just want to, you know, keep the cycle going. Again, we got about 1 hour and we want to get in as much as possible. So again, if you're jumping in, definitely spark some awareness, you know, turn the co-creative wheel also, because many of us here are, you know, we're going through many of the same processes, but sometimes the same things come up and, you know, we can deal with them together. And this is indeed like a course. So we have a tendency to see the same thing over and over again. So some of us have learned how to deal with things through perfection, and that's just doing it over and over again. Just like a piano player, you're capable of actually playing the song perfectly, but it has a tendency to need you to practice quite a few times. So all right, so we're going to jump right in with our brother Mike. 7B, Mikey 7, Mike. That's an awesome, that's it. Ronaghy, okay? I guess that's what we got. So I'm going to go ahead and let the brother in. Also do that screen time to make sure we get some controls of these interviews. But what's up, Honus? Mikey, you're on GLM. That is God Love Money. Giving thanks.
How's it going?
It's going. I'm here again. We're here now.
I'm so excited to be here. I can't believe I'm on.
Ooh, I know you coming in with the steam then. What's good?
Yeah, definitely. I just signed up for the Wealthy Bot.
All right. Congratulations.
And, yeah, I'm excited. I'm really getting into the crypto world, and I wanna emphasize for all the listeners how important it is to educate yourself in the crypto world at this moment while it's all blowing up, you know, because a lot of people, they think that, you know, Bitcoin is cryptocurrency itself. Like, you know, it's basically just like the name Bitcoin is like the big dog right now. But the whole cryptocurrency world is obviously like the future. And I have a channel I just started. It's actually called, it was actually called Decoding the Matrix before. And it had some clips of you before with some other guys, but now I changed it today. But yeah, it's going to be called the best of crypto. So I'm really excited to start that channel and to share the importance of getting into the crypto world, because cryptocurrency, man, it's a big deal for the older generation that doesn't know how the little things, like just how to deposit money into an exchange, and then after that move the money from the exchange onto a ledger itself.
Yes,
just that, the basics.
That's all it is right there. But that is the scariest process, especially when you did that transfer. You know, you did everything right, and you're waiting for that confirmation. Like, okay, my stuff is in the air, and obviously you don't have to send it all at one time. That's another newbie thing. You just like send all the coins at one time. It's like. But yeah, there's a learning curve there. So I love to, you know, see there being more education in the space. And it's just like you say, you know, it sucks to miss out. So, you know, you come around like the .com thing when just you could have just bought a domain. I always talked about this, yellow.com. and you would have been paid right now. And it's just like, if you are already, let's say 30, 40, you were there. I mean, it was available to you just like it was to everybody else. And that was another opportunity went by. What were we doing? And here we are again. We can see it has that same feel to it, because while I have a lot of friends, of course, that are in the crypto space, we can still say we make up a real, I guess it would be probably maybe 50 to 1, 100 to 1 that even know about it, let alone that have actually came over into the market and gone through that whole process of getting through that learning curve, right?
Exactly. And the other
Yeah.
thing is, I got into this space first off of, I was watching a lot of your videos, and you mentioned on one of your lives about the gold and the silver and the precious metals and the importance of having that as just like an asset itself. And then at the same time, investing in crypto. So you have like, because crypto is going to exponentially grow, but then it's also important to have, the metals, the precious metals, gold and silver, because they're going to go as obviously the dollar goes down in value, because we all know the Fed is printing up a ridiculous amount of money at the moment. But
Gold even has done some backflips. I think it was up like 25%. The great thing about gold is you can have it at the house. You can put it under your pillow, you can put it all on your chest, whatever you want to do with it. You get the hard thing there, and that's the standard. It's been there for a long time. I will say in conclusion that, we mark these ages, of course, by their currency. So whether it's the golden age, whether it's the plastic age, and then we always see a remnant still of that being used. Like we still even see folks that are gold heavy. Now we went through the plastic age, as I always mention, that people don't realize just what plastic did to every industry, to switch over from something like wood and metal, cheaper prices, lighter weight, able to mold it and, make all this Tupperware. They just went nuts with it. And of course, the credit cards came out too, and that became a part of the petroleum money, right? Even the dollar, fiat is really still backed by what we would say is the petroleum market, but very loosely, right? Yeah. And then, we would think that we'd be able to fast forward enough to just say, okay, so I see the trend here. What's coming next? And that's why we knew Ether was coming next. I wish I had a cop that Ether on Kickstarter when it was almost nothing. Yeah. And, but it's just, again, so Ether on a currency level is still Ether what on a metaphysical level. So we can also see that souls are going to be soul force, soul power, the energy coming off your body is going to be commonplace as we go into this air age in the next 3 years. And we're going to see a huge emergence in that vista. And as Ether just becomes more and more the thing, because people would for sure want to invest in the power of themselves more so than something else. So especially inanimate objects. So I definitely look forward to, your channel. And, just giving respect again out to those who are still out there keeping it real. Ian Bellina, the originals in this that have, continuously pushed knowledge and information and tried to keep the FUD away. I will say that this industry also has a heavy lock and binding to it. It's a mental thing. You really have to know what you're doing. And so all of that training, of course, is there within even our lessons that we give. And of course, Wealthy Bots group is there, which I'm sure you're a part of, where others can come in and really get some knowledge. So
yeah, they make it really easy. They answer the questions.
Yes, like 500 of us. So, everybody's, it's linear. See, that's the thing about metaphysics is it's everywhere. Like it really is an emotional thing. There could always be a different response for a different situation. But when you're dealing with something as like a script and literally a currency and a process, you can debug it to the point where you debugged everything. So, it is even easier for me personally to deal with something like that than the complexities of what we have to deal with sometimes with the mind and the consciousness. So I'm loving it.
Wholeness.
Oh, all right, brother. Wholeness. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me. Yep.
No doubt. I'll see you soon. So somebody's asking, one more thing, brother. What was your YouTube channel you got coming again?
Oh, it's called, it's called, I just changed it today. I can't remember right now.
Should you need to get that thing indexed and throw it up in the,
I'll throw it in there. I'll throw it in there in a minute. Okay.
Absolutely.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Wholeness. You're going to have to hang this thing up. They still don't give you the Xbox. It's a little X thing that I'm supposed to have. Even my Instagram guru Laura, she even sent me a screen share of what I was supposed to see, and it is not here. So I'm doing a screen capture this time just to show everyone in tech support over on the Instagram side. Also, I had this epiphany today because we've been doing a lot with the build, and I'm waiting on our brother to hang out because it still kind of got him frozen over there. But I had this epiphany today while building with the developers about like a smooth, clean integration with Instagram and Secret Energy just within our activity feed, to where you can start bringing in your Instagram stuff into Secret Energy and sharing with the tribe there at the click of a button. And you can also get images and things. And so we decided to go ahead and get that in the pipeline to get built in. We got one more UI push that should be really done next week. We probably have to spend a few days debugging it. And it's really beautiful. It's like a smash up between Facebook and Instagram, and as far as the on the GUI level. And so that'll be rolling. And at that point, that's when we're deploying Eniology phase 1 and phase 2, which again is absolutely free and is going to take you through that step-by-step process. Not just not just think that you know everything, or it's very mindful about where we would all start, but also not harping on things too much and letting you get on with the process of your journey. And that's something that, again, you can invite your friends into. You can try it out yourself. And it's just dope to have with you, especially on your phone. You're like augmenting your experience and making sure that you're staying up on your supplements, your workout, your regimen, your metaphysical knowledge, and just giving you, that, I guess what you would say is the Jedi Master's droid in this case, just notifying you of what's happening with the communication. So that's going to be beautiful. I'm looking forward to that coming. So I'm going to keep this going. All right, so we have our brother, or actually, that's our brother and our sister at a vegan paradise. Wholeness and balanced vibration. We're going to go ahead and let it breathe and let them come on up in here for some GLM. All right, they declined that. Maybe that was a slip on the button, so we may spin back around later. Some folks are like, okay, oh no, that's the wrong button. We'll keep it going. So we have Suwani. Check it out. Okay, so I'm waiting on this, cycling through. Okay, so hold on. That's somebody else coming up in this piece. Wholeness. Okay, I got you. You pressed the wrong button. Shoot, is that Darth Vader? Is that you? Hold on, man. Let me keep it moving. No, I'm joking. It kind of glitched and it brought somebody else in, but that's all right. I'm seeing the image come in. Wholeness and balanced vibrations, if you can hear this. Let me check this internet real quick. It looks good. Everything looks solid. So let me keep it going. It may be glitching in this. I know they're trying to push all of the features all at one time. I was like, man, I don't know about trying to compete with them. You can sidestep a bit of what. So look, it looks like, okay, there it is. It released it. All right. So we have one person. I'm gonna let it breathe just a little bit. I think maybe it's getting too much for it. I mean, I can't even imagine, again, dealing with developers exactly how they're cramming all of this in. They must have like 400 or 500 developers back there, and some hamsters even deliver the message. So, I guess I'll speak to just very briefly that, this is a wonderful time to be in. We've been going through some things, but this is making things very clear. I feel like that Earth was a bit hazy before this. We was kind of in that like entertainment wonderland of the trance of Disney and, the Power Wheels and all the rest of the stuff that have been cooking up in these Uniteds, as I say. And it's good to be shaking off this mesmerization, but we also have to, be expedient with how we move, because it's not like, again, there hasn't been a whole universe going on while the time we were still in the cocoon. So somebody is asking, is it time to flee the land of the North? Okay, so that's a question. And again, I'm just going to let that, bringing somebody in, breathe for a bit until the technology figures itself out. And I would say this, I said this during the last show, that what I noticed was, like, remember, if you're staying in a downtown, generally you're in a vortex, because that's how the ley lines are configured. That's why they call it downtown. And downtown attracts a lot of people, and downtown generally features Skid Row when you finally hit the bottom and you're out, which is not too far from the corporate office,
believe it or not. And so I always noticed that there was this pull that every time I wanted to go somewhere or do something, I mean, the final thing was, do I really want to leave these 3 cars that I got to pay for, these 2 condos that I got to pay for, Saturday or Friday nights at that spot, and it would be like, I would just feel more comfortable with where I was. And that was kind of like a holding pattern versus, when I got a little stagnant, they put me on some time out. I was thinking, man, why didn't you go anywhere, man? You had the bread and you even had some contacts. You knew some people and you just never got out there. And, it really kind of like, it was a downer for me because I just felt like that was another thing in life that I missed. And I said, if I ever got the opportunity again, then I was going to dip. I was going to go and see the rest of the world. And sure enough, I did. I got an opportunity to, really, really get myself back together. And then I said, you know what, let's fulfill that, what you said you was going to do, and let's step out of this piece. And I decided to come to Costa Rica, as many of y'all know, and I'm fixing this camera, by the way. And I decided to come to Costa Rica, and wow, I mean, even just touching the ground where, not everybody spoke English, and I was just in another country, I just felt like I had accomplished something. So in a nutshell, we always want to cook up this, like, I don't know, a Die Hard movie where the whole flame is blowing behind us and we got to slide under this door to make us make moves. Is it time to flee Babylon? It's Gog Magog rearing his nasty head and the 7-4 Hydra breathing on the land and Kali is on fire and I need to leave. And it's like, dang, do you need all of that just to go and see the rest of the world, take a vacation, get the experience? Like, one thing that I can say about, even the military is it sends brothers out there to the rest of the world and it changes them. And it's in a very, very balanced and a positive way, if you may. So the answer to that question is, man, if you could get on somebody, especially now, if you could get on something and go and see another place, like even Vietnam was cheap. I was almost in Vietnam. Like, I heard they was living it up over there and it was cheap. Colombia, it's a little, you got, you may need to get your neck a little bit thicker to be up in there, especially now. But Colombia is also a very beautiful place. Every place is going to have its side of things, right? So, but as far as how far your money goes, it's pretty immense. Unfortunately, Costa Rica does not have that benefit. It's very expensive here unless you're just way under the radar and you're living off the land. And, you can do that because, you got fish, you got coconuts, you have mangoes, you have, the full bread basket here of any tropical country. So that's like my pitch as your travel agent, that you need to definitely book something and go see somebody or something. All right, so let's keep going with this. Wow. Okay, so I can put it up on the screen now. Okay, so yeah, there's like this little screen, and I'm like really trying to work with my 2020 on that. So it says, 7, honestly, I'm just having trouble accepting oneness into my being. Is it because of my level of self-esteem? Like, why? Okay, we got this. See, I noticed something when I was talking to Ellerton L. He dropped some massive truth bombs for, just in its simplicity. He was saying that, the study is, in the study, we separate the bodies, but inside of the consciousness, we cannot separate anything. So there is no spirit body, physical body, mental body. We do that as references to begin to diagnose certain parts and aspects of the consciousness, right? So because of this habit, though, of separating things, we take it upon ourselves to imagine that it's us that actually has the power and authority to separate or bring unity. And this actually just came up within the last 3 weeks again. Just a quick check from the universe and explain to you, no, you don't. It's not your choice to determine whether or not we're truly unified. Unified would have to be more powerful than whether I'm in the same house with you, whether I'm in the same color grade as you. It would have to be way more powerful than that. And it is. Beyond all of this of what we're seeing, there's an entire network that looks like a weaving webs with energy moving through it. And we're so integrated with so many different things, including each other, everything is totally integrated. So when you're having trouble accepting something, pull back for a moment and just say, wait a minute, am I just wrestling against myself? Because the truth to the matter is people have misdefined it and they've made it into something that you quarrel about. Like, shoot, I ain't in with the abusers. No, we ain't one. I'm not one with them. And that could really be an argument, because what that's about is that's really more about resonance. Okay. That's the term that should be used. So we're not like using one term to explain everything. The resonance is what we're really talking about when we say, well, that just doesn't resonate with me. And see, in other languages like Tamil, there's a distinction between all of these words. They actually literally like out of the body, inside the body, on top of the body. There's a specific word for all of those things. Different energy centers is a specific word to avoid the confusion of when you're using one word to describe everything. So in this case, that oneness, that unity of being, it's not really a choice. So you can now move on to whatever the next challenge will be, because that's how the quest is, the questions in the mind. The next challenge, as things keep getting more and more clear for you, as you just ease yourself from, well, I'm already integrated with everything. So, because if it was our choice, that's a lot of power to let someone choose to disconnect themselves. Man, that's like, man, this is something, you don't want to put that kind of power in the hand of a being that's just discovering what kind of power they really have. This would be like, again, throwing you in a Lamborghini at 3 years old, right? Wiring your foot to the pedal and giving you like the thumbs up, like, I hope it works for you in that chariot. So that's what it is. I trust that that'll bring some clarity. Also, again, since I don't have my like X button, I may, back off the live for a moment. I'm sure I can get it in the next time I come in, but they were looking for proof. Like, just show us a screenshot of a live that you don't have the button. And I was able to take that screenshot. So I may push that along and make sure I just have that, because, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on these days. I would hate for someone to crash into my GLM acting crazy and, bringing that kind of energy into this balance. So that's why there's always got to be a moderator. This is like your car. It has a voltage regulator, and you got to have that in when power's coming across. So the question here is from Dent Body, another name. It's just one of those names. Like, one of my cats is like, his name is like Elevator Slim or something like that. Just some words just work together. So what's up, Dent Body? So saying, is the Enochian language safe to explore, or is this a system that will contract my soul and not open it? Is it a true angelic language? Okay. So the Enochian itself is directly derived from the 22 symbol, what you would say is now Hebrew. But of course, in the abjad, we have Hebrew. It's called the double-edged sword. So you have Hebrew and you have Arabic. And really the only difference is between the R and the L, which is like the left and the right, literally. So this double-edged sword, there's two magical systems with these two languages. And these two languages are basically what's called a flame language. And a flame language is that when you line up a flame, like an actual candle flame at the corner of a wall, over a period of time, it'll actually make the same shapes over and over and over again. And this is what the language was derived from. It's a fire language. And so with the proper use of this language, I'm talking about the proper use of ancient Hebrew, ancient Arabic, and of course there's languages before that, the Demotic script, the hieratic scripts, and some of the texts, again, Tamil, many languages that actually bear this sequence of being able to bring out basically a full torsion field, to speak fire. Okay. So what Enochian is Enochian is almost like a plagiarization in itself of this language, because you got to understand that what these people were doing is they were looking to try to construct the most potent form of magic and take credit for it by adding new things. So they tried to change the arrangements of letters, which has often happened. You even see languages that there's a couple letters that have been completely moved around over time, and that's to change the code for real. Because there's a specific order to the language, which I call the order of magnitude, and it's matched also with the gestation process of the child within in the female womb, but also the child's consciousness and the process that is going through in its consciousness to become, animate, to reach the solution point, the solve. So Since we're on number 4, I'll say 4 is the door. Okay, 4 is the delta. The delta is the door because it's also the symbol of the vagina, the uterus, and the door that we walk through. Also in Kemet, the delta region is the area where the Nile flows, and the Red Sea is also there. That all has to do with, those coming forth from the night into the day. And there's literally what you would say is a portal there that life comes through. So I'm mentioning this because we have to really be on point with the doors that we actually walk through in order to get to our mother. And that's why we talked before about just original and getting into that original state of consciousness and allowing that to show you where the door is. Because when you jump into these systems, because obviously John Dee worked in conjunction with the Golden Dawn, Nicholas Flamel, McGregor Mathers, Eliphaz Levi, that whole club, as we said, eventually Albert Pike, Jack Parsons, Eliester Crowley, Kurt Hume, Madame Blavatsky. So that whole club in itself, which was that H.P. Lovecraft, they weren't huge compared to none of the stuff that was going on. I mean, you got Mussolini running, you had Napoleon running around. So these are huge personalities, and what they were doing is trying to make their way in the world of occultism by going into these ceremonies and these sanctums in these countries as much as they could get into, and then kind of purposing the work into their own opus. Okay, so is it safe? I don't deal with Enochian. I just know what it is, but there's an original source. This source is also embedded within Enealogy. It's a process that 1 does really mean something, 2 does really mean something, and the transitional points between those numbers or symbols also have a real meaning to them and knowledge to deliver. So I feel like, why should I go and get the secondhand stepped on version, especially if there's some traps laid in there? Not could be, but there are some traps laid in there. Why be on that when I can just go right to the original? So I trust that assists you in understanding exactly if you should be working with that versus just working with that true language and those true numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and understanding how that rolls out, not only in linguistics, system, tarot, etc. That course itself is in sovereignty mentorship. It's specifically under Enealogy training, and there's a section there called Karma Codes, which is the Gnostic visual into the numbers. And it was like, man, even some of the stuff, like I had to just write down. Like I was not able to just say I could absorb all of this knowledge, even though in every transmission I deliver all the knowledge about every single number and what it means. Because then once you have the code, it starts doing things on its own. Like that's the beauty of it. It has like a perpetual motion to it within itself. And that's what we call infinite wheels. So it just once it spins and you take out a lot of the block work within the consciousness by answering the whats, the whens, the whys, what I call the wilderness or the W or the zigzag. Once that starts to really start getting harmonized, then all of a sudden, hemispheres connect. And then you get to experience the oneness. And that's why I bought for, another authority, like in this case, Central Intelligence, showing that they had already discovered that there was one side of the brain basically just taking orders. It could do anything, but it was waiting on the command of the other side of the brain. And that side of the brain was the gatekeeper. It was basically policing, if you may, I think it's the left side of the brain is policing the right side of the brain in respect to saying, hey, you can't do that. You can't go back that far. You can't remember when you were a child. You can't, you don't know who you were. You don't know who all your ancestors are. And this is that left side, if you may. But then when that's removed or disabled, as you read, and whether through hypnosis or binaural beats or different methods of accomplishing this. That's why some people come through the awareness of the matrix by entirely different means. Once you can start telling directly the right brain what you want, let me see 5,000 years ago. It has the data. It knows how to go, okay. It's like, okay, what are you going to show me? And then it starts coming. And, the reason, again, why it's important to bring a sober authority is a lot of people just think, oh, that's metaphysical talk. Yeah, everybody talks about that, but they haven't got to it yet. And there's, of course, several reasons why they have not been able to reach that state yet. And what we do is we try to work through those reasons, for the love of life, for the gift to our sisters and brothers. Same way it was given to me, same way it's given to another to give it to us. All the knowledge and all the wisdom is something that was given. Like even right now, even my original thoughts, like I feel like I have some very pure and unique original thoughts. At this point, I just realized that they're making their way back into the realm again. But truly, original thoughts in this code, in the code set, it's just, it's like everything has an origin point and a birth, but that's so much more closer to what we would call the subjective plane. And the things that you would be conceiving there, you can't even play like, oh, I need to be successful my whole life. And just those kind of ideas are, I'm really from this other planet. Just those things are even an inkling to what is going on and what kind of wheels are turning closer to the subjective plane and the powers that are present there, which are like what we would see with the periodic table and interfacing with nobles. You see what I mean? And, noble is like, think of the word, and what we know here as a noble is somebody who's very respectable. Because it's something, they've achieved something. So when you're speaking directly with helium, hydrogen, argon, etc., the conversation's a bit different. So it's just something to let us know that once we click into realizing that everything has a sentience to it, and then you can learn how to dial into its specific vibration. So let's keep the cycle going again, as we've been saying today. This question is from Rohan. Check some of these questions before I push the button. Is this why they put muzzles on the women to keep them from speaking the flame language? That actually has, you could add that to the pot too. But really, it's interesting how the whole thing played out because, okay, here's a good example. This is something that actually happened today. So I take it to looking through certain programming these days, like, and what's coming across the program in other countries, because I realize that they're just setting some of these other countries up for something that we've already been through. And one of those is India. So I noticed, meaning as a Western world, we've been through a lot of the programming and entertainment, but they're very innocent in many respects. So they haven't seen, they're a little bit, I would say, if you want to call that naive, if you want to call that pure innocent, those kind of all roll together. So they're a little bit more naive. They don't need to see stuff blowing up bodies, a hell of a story where you're just like, oh my goodness, that's totally not what I thought was going on. They don't need that yet, right? They just need like a simple story, and they're fascinated because that whole thing with media and Hollywood, Bollywood, etc., was just rolling out, okay? So I was noticing that this one company specifically, let me get to this real fast here, but this one company, I saw the beginning of 2 flicks. And it was from the same production company. And the storyline was women need to basically work in men's roles. And this was what, like one, they wanted women to wrestle, and the other one wanted women to fly planes, okay? But the story and the subtext, like rebelling against your parents and do whatever you want. And they were even creating music around it. When they even are translating the lyrics, and it was like, man, what is this? Like, what are you trying to create but dissension in someone's household if this is the instructions? It has nothing to do with whether women can be pilots or whether women can be wrestlers. This had to do with creating rebellion and also allowing, let's say, women to become fire. That's what's really happening in California. Man, California is really Kali. California is a real goddess. They still got pictures, and still got pictures of the indigenous tribes walking through there, and the woman that was the leader, if you may, of all those indigenous tribes. And you could tell there's some power going on here. But if you ignite the divine feminine, which the West was also very symbolic. They wanted the West so bad. It has a lot of power to it. Where the sun sets would have a lot of power to it. So long story short, just to get to the question, in Islam, it came to a point where women did figure out their power. And you had many women covens, female covens, that were sprawled throughout the land. And you also had situations where women were being sold. So it became like a norm to that. If you had like a beautiful gem, if you had a woman that was beautiful, you would try to hide her, because even somebody else from another kingdom, even the sultan, somebody else would try to actually come and take your wife and take your daughters. So it became this thing to keep women covered up. And then that kind of segued also into suppressing woman's everything. Like, not just her positions in society, but most importantly, the power that she has when she's able to work with her force, her tantra as her kundalini. And it's because it's like they call it zombie, basically, meaning the poisonous powers. Now, of course, it's a sliding scale. So there's obviously women who know how to use this power to bring in a great deal of abundance, harmony, peace, our great grandmothers, etc. But there's always a flip side to that, right? So that's always what I notice with a lot of the men when they start, carrying the matriarchal flag, which is great, especially if you're healing yourself. But then they kind of go overboard and kind of imagine that there's actually not another side to the divine feminine, just like there's another side to the divine masculine. And that to identify that side, it's already been identified very specifically. And especially in occultism, because in dark occultism, of course, they're going to tap into that inverted womb, which is really the upside down pentagram. So they're going to try to activate all these pains in order to bring out a power that is basically it's just relentless, unrelenting power. Okay. And this power, it's like, you see a lot of the women, like I said, Beyonce, which I call seance. She was doing it for sure a lot more back in the days. Like now she's just on her Warhol, as I call it. And same thing, of course, with Cardi. So they use this power, but it's not like they know about how this specifically works, because it's not that complicated, especially when someone else is transferring it into you and putting you in the proper positions on the right days to use you as a conduit for that power. So what I'm saying is that the Catholics and the Muslims alike just decided, let's just put this away. That's why the whole thing became forbidden fruit. It was really this agenda to keep women away from spirituality altogether. That's why it's like, hey, you can't work in a spiritual position, because woman starts working in a spiritual position as a let's say a minister, she's going to probably segue, if she can keep her awareness open, she's going to end up segueing into another level of power at some point, just in her genuflection point, meaning that as she starts contemplating and praying and tarrying, as they call it, she's going to entreat something, and that's going to give her certain instructions. So they were like, okay, let's just try to cut it off. But everyone knew that this was not something that you could just end. It was going to be something that was going to, like anything else that gets suppressed, one day explode. And then we were going to be at this point, and we're going to be also so confused about a lot of stuff that's going on around us. This is almost even in itself the author of confusion, because now we don't understand, because the story is completely missing. It's like a missing link. And then we don't understand, well, why are women being suppressed and blah, blah, blah. And then here's another thing, just to make sure the energy stays balanced here, is that it's not a completely patriarchal or negative patriarchal agenda against women. Behind the scenes, many of those covens, like what was Vin Diesel's movie where there was a woman that he had to go and pick up, right? And she had some powers. And in that process, a female coven of older women were in pursuit of this woman. This is the same thing in Dune with the Bene Gesserit witches, okay? There are women that already are completely aware of all this, that have been in covens for thousands of years, using the magnetic energy in order to keep restoring themselves, very similar to like vampires. I think Madonna may even be one of them. And in that process, I mean, absolutely almost Madonna would for sure be one of them because of her name. You wouldn't give her as an occultist or warlock that name unless you could truly embody that inverted aspect of Madonna into that being, the material girl. And so then when you see how many lives that's impacted, that's when you'll understand, yeah, there's an undercurrent going on here. And here's what I will say also to even bring it balance even more. We have to realize also that Earth is capable, and this is something our sister Wishby brought up last night in a beautiful meditation, but Earth is capable of transmuting all of these energies the same way when you breathe in oxygen and then you breathe out carbon dioxide. That's virtually a byproduct from you. Same thing, when you eat this food, it's got energy into it. Then when you defecate it, you've changed the state of the energy. That would become fertilizer and actually food for the environment next door, if you may. So that's also another reality of the powers, is that we have to get familiar with, instead of holding our anger and trying to act like we don't have it, giving it to the earth so earth can transmute that energy. And you would think, well, I don't want to send bad energy to earth. You're kind of like still in a human state, trying to think about how this whole being processes energy. It already has the fire, earth, wind, water action going on. So anything that you give will be transmuted. The issue is if you hold it. And that's what I find to be the overall thing with even why women ultimately became veiled was, again, when you're trying to hold these powers, and like I said, we're here now. So this is not something I wish this didn't happen. That's not where I'm at with this. I'm just saying that I would love to be in a space where others didn't try to hold others' power. Like a man could even take a woman, or a woman could take a man, and really almost like shroud them and never allow them to be who they truly are. Like keep them locked up in a room somewhere and they never discover their potential, like a troll or an ogre or something like that. So of course, I wish to be in a world that doesn't contain those kind of things. But I also would love for that also to accompany a world where people were responsible for the energy that they bring to each other. Which, is an interesting process, because that means that we would actually have to go through the training first. And then when we come into the space, because we would learn how to be responsible, we would be able to keep building in the space. And this is what I noticed even about men and women, is that they have this kind of yin yang thing going on, and it works for a moment because it like turns the wheel. Yin yang, opposites attract, right? So it's kind of like turning the wheel and we're getting somewhere. And that generally happens, especially in the beginning of a relationship. But then at a certain point, that same force, because of, things that happen in the relationship, it starts going in an opposite direction. And you find that now you're not only not getting where you wanted to go anymore, it seems like you're going backwards, or you may be getting stuck, right? And that's just only, hey, let's recall again that we had a yin yang thing always going on in the beginning, and our opposites attracted each other, and we were getting somewhere with that though. I mean, I was liking your poutiness and your cute arguments and that kind of thing, and your hostilities against my ideals. This was great witty banter, but now this is full blown warfare, and we're going in the opposite direction. How do we restore? So this is just a part of balance. Like I said before, it's like not something that you can just say, okay, I'm balanced and I'm done. It's something that you got to maintain at all times, right? So we got some more questions over here. Somebody, actually not just somebody, the great Lena Hitova, wholeness and balanced vibration, sis, giving thanks. Always great to see you. So it says, is the story of the nomos real? Aquatic reptilian-like beings created us. Okay. What happens here is that for sure the human DNA, just like, okay, so right now I was listening to some of Kassar today, still riding out with Kassar. And he was talking about what is real. And he was explaining how you have this thing where we even say, okay, well, we came from, and they're fill in the blank. Some people say we came from apes. Some people say we came from the stars. But every time we refer to something, especially if it's an animal, we have like an awareness. Like I say, we say, oh, we came from primates. Okay, mammals. But where did the tree, though, come from? Because the tree does not fit into that same category, yet is still here running on some type of OS, if you may. It has an operating system, program, a level of knowledge. And so with that being said, it's very clear, since we understand the network of unification, that all of these things had a part in the creation. So I like the way he was explaining, like creation unfolds like a lotus. It doesn't really start, this whole Big Bang. It's great for certain analogies, but it's really more like the opening of a lotus. You see, that's almost like the difference between making love to somebody versus, just having sex. A Big Bang versus the opening lotus, okay? So in this process of this opening lotus, we find that it's akin to like a dream. It doesn't really have a beginning. This is how you solve that mystery which language cannot solve. Like, where's the beginning? So just realize it as this then, that you've never had a dream start in the beginning. Like you just... The dream seems to start and you're already going in full sweep. These people know you. You know what I mean? So is there really a beginning? And the reason why the consciousness cannot deal with that is because this is insanity for the consciousness. Remember what I said before, that when the consciousness does not have something that it can ID and identify, it gets afraid until you train it to, hey, stop trying to put a shell around everything. That's really what Earth does as an element. That's why the Platonic solids were so important, was Earth has a power that cools things down and slows things down and then puts it into a container. And now, if to answer the question directly, we have so many origin points and beings that are taken a part of the creation process, if you want to call it that. This is just the generation of this body that we're all sharing and this conscience that we're all sharing. We can say for sure the Nomo story is real. And the beings also that were maybe a direct byproduct of those Nomos may not even be the current version, if you may, of the human that we're seeing now. We may see more happen after the Nomos. Like maybe the Nomos were really strictly aquatic, like Yamaya, and many of the beings that you keep seeing as you dig, especially into any of the Hindu texts, any of the ancient Alkebu-Lanian texts, even some of the fetishes that you still see in Africa of what you would call today a merman or merwoman. And that is really more or less the direct lineage. And I would say for sure, this is so unexplored, but has so much going on. And I point there because the ocean is actually that way. And going out there, there's just always, for me, I mean, I have a lot of respect for the ocean. And it's just because the ocean, man, it's the unknown. Like even when I was out there doing some diving and things and some scuba diving, or excuse me, some snorkeling even, every time we would go out, you never see the same thing. And it gives you this, you never know what you're going to find out here. It's not going to be like turtle to the right, dolphin to the left, eel up a couple more blocks. It's not going to be that. And that is what, again, I feel like if you're trying to really run through fears, stuff like those kind of techniques of going into the deep water will start pushing through those fears because you start becoming comfortable with places that are unknown. So just always remember, there are those with training, specific training, to not be afraid of the unknown and to not move their signature. Because, and we've talked about this before, but when you, okay, so what happened is that sometimes you'll go into this meditation and you'll start to see something. We've talked about this a few times. And then you'll immediately say, well, what is that? And then it'll disappear. And man, or you'll feel something, like you'll feel something strange. Like, what is that? And then it'll disappear. And then as you keep going, you realize those are actually the points that you're supposed to keep enduring and let the next thing happen or let it come into full view. But you can't grab it. You can't become alert, if you want to call it that. You can't become awake, if you want to call it that. It's like you're watching a dream, like a lucid dreamer. We can watch the dream. But if we try to grab the dream too much, we wake up. So we're trying to ride that line. And so it's the same thing here, is that, it's just realizing how to keep your consciousness at a point where at some point that you get to where the unfamiliar things, you know how to go a little bit longer with the unfamiliar things before you interrupt. And that's what I was saying the difference is between the student, the master, the observer. The student is not the observer. You would think because the student's watching the master and learning something that they're the observer, but they're not. There's a motive, there's an objective there. Observer does not have a motive or objective. There's no motor running, if you may. And what this is allowing them to do is, it's like basically you're invisible to them. If they're all around, if you may. There's life and forms in existence all around you. We know this. There's thousands of them on the surface of your skin. But somehow you're not aware of them because you're what we would call awake. But when you put yourself into what is the synanabalistic state, even a theta, as it's called, it starts to come out a little bit because you're transitioning where you would be right between sleep and wakefulness. And in that stage, you're able to interact, you're able to see, you're able to move around, even do things, detach. go into spaces where time is different. You could sit in on a 1,000-year lesson in 30 minutes. It's like a dream that you wake up from. You feel like it was a long dream. It's only like 15 minutes. So there's an area there. There's a doorway there. But the beginning of getting in it has a lot to do with, one, as the first part of the conversation was about the oneness being indefinite. It's like something just smoothing into the oneness, not as a choice. That way you're not, resisting the oneness. It's ridiculous. And then two, knowing how to deal with the power and the responsibility that you need to have with the power, because this is to see you tear yourself up with the power is not in really benefit of the ancestors. That's why a lot of people don't have power. It's not in the benefit at all from the dark side and the light side to see you get any, if you want to call them that respectively, for you to see you get any power and you don't know what you're doing with it. So it's just one of those things where, you have to get to a certain level of maturity, and that's why then it becomes the adept or the adult. So we're going to go into rapid fire mode. We got 8 minutes here. Okay, I think we got our brother Rohan in a minute, so I may just run through this. I was just reading the words while they're both done. It looks like the same cause, the same both can create life. Absolutely, you're on point. Let me see who else we got going on here. How do we uplift the divine masculine in this era? Great question. Great question. Man, that's a whole build. I might have to just come back in and, because, relationships in the male and the female is very intrinsic. And also, even as a male, you got to be careful what you say, because you may trigger a woman envy that they may have from their father. And then that's it. Unsubscribe. You never see him again. So I would love to give that, in its own respective right, a place, because every time I've gone into the divine masculine and what it really stands for, I've really had to bring out like some imagery and things like that to show the solution, the sum. We call it the sun, but we put an M on it, the sum total. Okay. And we see immediately two different forms of thought, one being false, one being true. One that says that sum is a part of something, like give me some fruit. I'm not asking for all of the fruit in this use of sum. I'm asking for a part of it. SOME, some of it. Versus in pure Ma'at thematics, the sum, SUM, is the totality or all of it. And that is then a very foundational standpoint. So that foundation is the divine masculine. And that's just the beginning of cracking into something like that. How do we uplift men to be able to be more aware of that? Is a total gamut of awareness of exactly what the masculine and the feminine need to be doing together. And especially in the awareness at times, because we get in this guilt trip or this game, we start playing this game and we forget that even when we're talking about divine masculine, we're talking about divine feminine, we're not talking about the androgen. And what the androgynous state is on a spiritual level. And that, because that helps, because it gives us a really strong floating point to realize that we're both trying to achieve something, not that one being has already achieved it and one being is like the byproduct or all the different stories that are now coming out about the divine masculine. And they don't really need us, and they're really parthogenic, which I was actually one of the pioneers of also bringing that back around, that women were procreating by themselves, but to insist that a part of the creation is just a genetic modification and has no use is just ridiculous, because how did life get started here in this segment right now in this time? And do we really want to move the components of life out of the way, which are the foundations that we're standing on right now? So that's another conversation for another day. This next question is, okay, very quick, of past, present, future are all connected. Is there a possibility that all of this has potentially happened already? It has. Everything has already moved through this space. It's already moved again through this space right here. This space right here. All of space has moved through this space. This is a secret to power, because once you realize that all of it is right, everything is right here. This space here is like a rotation. This is like a whirlwind, and everything has come across this space. So in that respect, time is in vibration and frequency slow down to allow what we call life. The easiest way to put this is that on Earth, there's a vibratory frequency that generally oscillates somewhere around 7.83 hertz. That's ground, okay? Now, if it was oscillating at 20 hertz, plants can't grow. The oscillation would even vibrate and shake the soil to where the plant would feel like it's being shook all the time. And there are certain things that cannot grow in that kind of resonance. So this is perfectly in this vibratory frequency to be a growing point for many beings. So that's how things really connect through the vibratory frequencies, and how the vibratory frequencies then become space and time. We got another question here. This question is, would tapping into our Moorish bloodlines and reconnect us to our galactic memories and ancestries? That could be a little bit of a loaded question, because I think the definition of Moor is starting to vary based on whoever it is that you're talking to. And I don't doubt at all that there wasn't some brothers really waxing and sisters waxing strong in Al-Andalus, and that it was on point with the spiritual knowledge and awareness of everything that we were learning from the trade routes and the roads and everything. But, where power exists, there becomes a potential for corruption of power. So I would always say that there are more primordial forms that are ancestral lineages and energies that are archetypes that we can actually ping off of. There was a build about that in relation to even, I think our brother Sven was talking about Sobek, which is the crocodile, and just how long the crocodile's actually been here as an ancestor. And even pinging off that energy sometimes just really right away you're getting knowledge and wisdom coming from an entirely different segment of time. So I kind of see, just like I said earlier, that I didn't really want to read any of the new books, any of the new age books. I wanted to get into the ancient knowledge because I felt like they were maybe closer to the truth. So it's that same thing with, figuring out like what kind of bloodlines we really want to be adapting to, because Ma'at tells you everything did start at the same source. It's impossible for there to be like 500 different sources. Well, again, this is where it becomes a paradox, because as I said, everything took part in the creation. Everything was the creation. But you have that origin point, if you may, in mathematics that says your grandma, your grandma's grandma, your grandma. And then pretty soon you start seeing all the bloodlines and nations and people and all that. They start coming into that singular being. And that singular being is, as I said, an androgynous form. And then once it goes from androgynous form and links back up, then it starts making its way back towards the subjective plane, which is the center of the spindle. It's like a DVD disc, the DVD spindle disc. So you start making your way back to the center, and in that center, now the closer you get to the center, the slower the vibratory frequency actually. It becomes almost motionless, unmovable. And this is an important state because it becomes the foundation for everything, as I explained before. Things that don't move and are not subject to the laws of the yin and the yang as much become stable. Like the yin and the yang is like all these different emotions and subsets and all these different things that we have now, these personalities, that could be very chaotic, even for children and others that are trying to live in that environment. You could be very chaotic to them with all of that. So there's got to be beings that are like, when you see your great-great-grandma, she's like very stable. They even have a stable build. Even great-great-grandfather, there's a stable build. The shoulders are broad. There's a more planted, like if you look at the indigenous statues of the great mothers, you see everything, the thick thighs, and everybody's planted, stable. You see what I mean? And that's also the energy of Earth. So, tap into the 4 elements. I keep explaining. I'm gonna try to put up a recording tomorrow. One of my brothers, blood brother, he's been in prison for 3 years, just on something he did when he was younger. And I got a chance to build with him about 2 or 3 days ago. And I really wanted to give him a short, concise, entertaining version of what he needs to be working on. So I went through the elements with him really fast, and I lensed it through human personality. And then I dived back into the element itself, show the elements posture and demeanor, and it clicked for him. So I want to bring that forward because, I just want to share, because anytime I'm talking to somebody I love, it really, really comes out to try to give them as much as I can. And that's why, when I'm in these sessions, man, I'm like, I'm in the paint here just working to give you everything that you need. But I also know now, just through wisdom and adepthood, that it's not all going to come out in an hour anyway. So it's best to just roll through this, in a very smooth, synchronistic way. So I think we're entering into the end of today's build. I know I kind of popped this thing on about 10 minutes after the hour. It looks like also we got a chance to get through quite a few of our questions. There's still a few in here. And actually, I may just do one GLM with just knocking out all of the past questions, because I don't want you to think at all that, questions just going into, the abyss and we're not going to get around to them. I will see them at some point. Someone says, much love. Thank you so much. It means so much. Just like I said, cycling with tribe and building and continuously going forward with our plans, knowing that we are the mission in this. This is exactly why this is so complicated. You think, man, what is all this stuff? I got to do all of this. It's because you're the mission. Because a lot of times you're thinking, man, I got to get all of me done so I can finally get on my mission. No, you're actually the mission. And once you finish your mission, you're done in the context of, trying to get to something. Now you go where you want. There's a difference between trying to get to something versus just going where you want. In life is really about giving you a lot of parameters to determine where you want, because where you want to go. Your parents want the best for you. So they need to let you see all this contrast. So you know what you want in your world and what you don't want in your world. Like a lucid dreamer, we call worlds up and we don't bring things in the world that we don't want. That's the power of being in control of your dream. Anybody that has lucid dream before knows what I'm talking about. You start bringing, I want to fly. I want to go to an area where there's nothing that's made by man's hand. I want to fly out there past the moon. Some things actually, though, I noticed there were some limitations, like jettison. Like I used to notice I was running out of thrust. I'd get like a little bit beyond the moon, and then looked like there was nothing to stand on, and I'd start slipping. And I realized, oh man, we need a little bit more fuel. And that's why I realized what the spirit body is also designed to do. It's like, when you see a rocket, you see the rocket take off, it drop the canisters, right? And the canisters are filled with fuel, right? So those are all the fluids that are inside of your spine. And as you're going into this ascent, that fuel is being burned, no mistake. And this is why even Ayurveda, they learn how to refine the fuels, the chulins, the shilajit. This changes the consistency of the liquids that are going in your body, gives them more of a mineral base like a battery so that they're not completely degenerated. And then it gives you the conduction. It basically insulates the walls of the ventricles that the power is running through. This is real stuff. And then this allows you to be able to jump off without actually coming down or exploding or becoming unstable. Again, Oppenheimer was in the Bhagavad Gita when he discovered the formula to the atomic weapon. But it was only that he reversed the formula for implosion. So in the Gitas is the formula of implosion, which the yogi learns by imploding the energy within the body and quirking, right? They took that to cause implosion. They took that, reversed it, and then called explosion. And now he became death, the destroyer of worlds. So when we turn that around, you become life, the sustainer of worlds, right? That's Trimurti. That's power. But how can we get to that if we're arguing with, we're fighting and, we're judging and all of that kind of stuff? You don't want one waft of power in your hands with that kind of thing going on. You being smoked somebody right away. It's just smoke. It's like, wow, it's instant karma right away. So I trust that this makes sense. Wholeness and balanced vibrations. It was lovely to be in here again. Loving the space to connect. And of course, I'm getting here as often as I can. I'll speak with everyone soon. If you haven't jumped in with us yet, secretenergy.com. As I said, specialist training is free. We can solve those money problems, no problem. And the tribe awaits. Sovereignty mentorship. The materials are there. Get yourself into your activation. As they say, when the student is ready, let's make it happen. Wholeness.